I can remember this
Not
going
like
back to
nine.
Linda's days.
I changed the title, I know it's the January PAC meeting. So, oh, it says live now. Oh, maybe, okay, so that might, it might work. Let's see what
What's happening?
I can't get on here.
Not much, we're still in vacation mode.
Look, I understand.
So's the equipment.
Yep. And
Just make sure,
it's live.
make sure you have your mics on, folks, because otherwise no one can hear you.
Okay.
We'll call this meeting of PAC to order. We'll call additions, deletions, and/or the approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Hearing none. Approval of the minutes, December 18th, 24.
I'd move to approve the minutes of December 18th, 2024.
Seconded?
I'll
Moved
second.
and seconded. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried. Planning and Development Report is tabled.
I mean, there was vacation, and honestly,
you're on
I
vacation, that's
didn't
that.
have a lot of time to get anything
That's
recorded.
good.
So it'll be a kind of a 1.5 in the next month. It'll
Okay.
record the few weeks of work over the vacation period and plus this coming period
Good.
as well.
Okay.
I almost had today enough work for a whole friggin' period. So
Yeah, we're getting close.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
it is. It is.
Strategic direction discussion from the Dalhousie students' final report.
Yeah, so I don't want to present on that. It was a fairly lengthy bit of reading for everyone. I really wanted to gather your views if there were any things that jumped out at you, and I'll preface that by saying we do have two of the students with us now as intern. One of them will be doing 80 hours over 10 weeks, and one will be doing 40 hours over 10 weeks. And so we've had one meeting with them so far, virtually of course, and we're trying to figure out what things we need to concentrate on. What can we, in the time we have them for, put them to the best use to actually get some things accomplished, as opposed to sort of just taking us further along a path that we'll end up perhaps not going anywhere with because of so many other things that we have on our plates. And I was hoping that by taking some time to read through the report and reflecting on, the things we talked about at the last meeting, you might want to suggest that we go in certain directions. I know what I'd like to do, and Scott had some slightly different ideas, but without kind of influencing what your thoughts were, it would be interesting to hear from you in terms of having read the report and what you'd like to see us work on.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add to that a little bit. In addition to what the students have been doing, I kind of feel like this is the start, really, of trying to get the town to think about new council, new term, where do you want to be? If you could be a tree, what tree would you be, right? Like, that's the question the town needs to ask itself. I think, now that you've got, 2/5 of the council is new, this is the time to start thinking about strategic issues. And so Mr. Day and I thought that, the work that the Dalhousie planning people have done provides a pretty broad canvas, particularly related to downtown. And there's an opportunity then to use that as a bit of a springboard to think about the rest of the town. And so while, at PAC, for those of you who, for the PAC members, it's really about thinking about it in the context of planning. But for council, it's in the context of the whole town and the students focused on downtown as opposed to the whole town. But it gives you a good jumping off point to think about planning and the town and development and future and change all at the same time. And so that's what we were hoping to foment today, is a bit of a discussion, so that we could hear from you what you're thinking about, and then use that to do two things. One, direct the interns over the next 8 to 10 weeks, so that we can, it's going to be nice to have a little bit of additional intellectual horsepower in the place. And then two, to kind of direct the activities of Mr. Day and I, though I must say, there's a lot of stuff going on, and the stuff we've already got in the pipeline is kind of consuming most of the bandwidth that the two of us have. But, we should start thinking about the future, because, at some point, those things will be, those projects or whatever will be, kind of self-managing. They'll be running, right? And it's always getting them going that's tough. Once they're going, we'll have time to start thinking about other things. So I'll shut up.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Sean,
It's just there's a lot of noise coming from the speakers, and I'm not sure what that's about, if it's...
There is some static back here too.
It usually just drops off though. That's
Yeah.
the longest I've heard it
There,
go.
just look. It's done now.
No, it's still there, yeah.
it's coming through the speakers out there, gentlemen? You can hear it through the speakers?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's interfering with the feed in some way.
Well,
Oh, well, okay.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to suggest, or ask, I guess, the students that we have, so what amount of time again are they going to devote to us?
Ellie has 80 hours over 10 weeks, and Rebecca has 40 hours over 10 weeks. And the reason Rebecca has...
It's you, Sean.
You're
cracking up.
Not touch anything. Rebecca has less because she's actually doing a full 80 hours with a private consultancy,
Okay.
but she still really wanted to do some work with us.
Yes.
So she's kind of, it's not course material for her,
freelancing.
it's actually kind of volunteering.
Yeah.
Good.
She wanted to keep
Yeah.
involved in this process.
Yeah.
So
They're
it's about
both
a day
super
and a
keen.
half of people time per week,
week.
for 10 weeks, right?
Nice. So my thoughts are this, that there's a lot of stuff in that report that they produced for us, the students produced for us, right? And it's impossible to, do it all at once.
Absolutely.
In my mind. So I think we need to pick the low-lying fruit, the things that we can actually turn into action and see results on, whatever they might be, and deal and focus on those in the beginning, and then just broaden out as we go. And I also see it as, quite often with a new council and starting a new term of 4 years and so on, we sit down and we do a strategic planning. We talk about what do we want to see, what do we want to accomplish in the 4 years that we have together as a group. And they've already done that for us in my mind. Like, I don't know that we need to do that now, because the report that they gave us, I see it as that. I see it as here's a plan that you can look at doing Westville Council, PAC, and citizens. And so I think we've gone past that step. It's great. It's fantastic. We don't need to do that. If we use that as a strategic plan and see it as that. Mm-hmm. And so once again, I go back to, we can't do it all at once, but let's pick out, and I would, I'm going to turn it around. You said you'd like to hear from us. I'd like to know what you as planning director and Scott as CAO picked out of that report as the ones that we should be focusing on in the beginning.
Before I talk, does anyone else want to add something that... Before
One
I
of the
influence
things
your thinking?
that stood out to me the most, looking at the report, was the response, the feedback that we got back from the citizens that engaged in the survey. Mm-hmm. And I think it was like 43%, I believe, that wanted consistent, better sidewalks. Mm-hmm. So, and that goes right along with our inclusion and various things that we're trying to make Westville, active transportation, our accessibility issues within Westville. So I think we heard them pretty loud and clear there. And second to that, I believe, was lighting. And we've talked about some various options. So those were the two things that stood out that to me were what the people are saying they want and what we should work on immediately.
those are good.
Anyone else?
Okay, so some while ago, I pitched to Scott, and I think in fact, I'm sure I mentioned to you, to council in the day, back before the previous Christmas, about the idea of getting a bit of money to do kind of a survey of Main Street and find out where the broken bits of sidewalk were, where the discontinuous bits were, and so we could use that to budget replacement of sidewalk in needed areas. And we didn't do it at that time, and I don't think it made it into this budget, but and it's tricky now because we also potentially are going to be doing some AT stuff, and so we discussed at the last meeting not wanting to do things twice, but there are some really egregious areas with respect to sidewalk safety in the downtown, and so maybe that's what we do with respect to that, as we tackle some of the really bad ones first, and they'll be challenging. Like around Needs is terrible, but they're going to fight back because they're not going to want any changes to the ability to roll in from every different direction, you know, into parking you there. Another one is the area of the car wash. There's like 200 feet with no sidewalk, and cars can roll in anywhere along there. That's about as dangerous as it gets for pedestrians. But they like it that way. They're used to it that way. But cars know how to go through driveways, and they'll be fine. So those are some things I think we can put on the list. They're ones that I would like to see done as well. From a planning perspective, they weren't what I had on the list, and I'll let Scott. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing that I would say is we have 2 planners for a day and a half a week, and neither of them, I dare say, knows how to lay sidewalk.
Right.
Right, like, so we need to understand that,
Right.
that when we're talking about what these interns can do for us, it isn't gonna fix the sidewalk. They can help us do some planning and prioritization and those sorts of things, but, you know, sidewalks are crazy expensive, and we're gonna have to find a way to deal with that over time. So, yeah, so anyway, it's just, that would be the context that I would bring to bear on what we're gonna ask these interns to do.
So if sidewalks is the main issue, is there something in that planning part that they could tackle, whether that's quotes, whether, I don't, you know?
Well, and, you know, I suspect that we could
Plan.
create a little template and bring them into town, right? And turn them loose to do the survey for us, right? The sidewalk survey. I mean, it's walking along and saying, you know, we just don't have the time with Public Works to be able to do that. But maybe that's something, you know,
Yep.
that's one day we could send them out and do that. Right?
And to that end, Rebecca is very keen she was on the well-being or the wellness group, and she's reached out to Mel, our rec director, to see how she could help Mel in her work toward active living around town. So she kind of wants to have her foot in that world as well as the planning world, and I think Ellie is solidly in the policy side,
Right.
which is where I'm keen to go. So there's no denying. Well, let me just back up. The refurb of the building on the corner of College and Main, they have a list as long as everyone's arms here for people who are trying to get into those units, and they are, you know, instantly fully booked starting February 1. And that's, you know, really testament to the fact that we've got to get busy providing and creating and enabling more housing to happen in the community. So that's kind of one of my main focuses. And ideally, we'll do that all around the core. And that's why the program for the students was about how do we make our downtown more vibrant, increase the amount of residential opportunities in the downtown, but also in kind of the core neighborhoods around the downtown. So that was kind of their focus area for that project. And so taking that together with the fact that we've got to create our own LUB MPS, and we're going to do it in a way it's going to be iterative or stepwise. What I want to do with the help of the students, and Scott and I will be chugging away on this as well, is look at what tweaking can we do on the residential side, the residential policies, particularly in the core neighborhoods, as part of the adoption of a new Westville LUB MPS. So that's one bit, and it's a big bit, because we've got to go through the various zones and think about, okay, what are we asking people to do that is discouraging them from developing? What do we need to make sure we continue to have? Where can we increase density without it creating trouble? There's a lot of questions like that that we'll have to churn through and discuss at this committee and present to the public. So there's no lack of work there. That probably by itself would be enough for the amount of time that we have help for, and maybe not even enough. The other part of that, and I've talked about this before, and it came up a lot in the information from both studies, both surveys, is the kind of rundown aspect of the community. And I've mentioned before, and I think one of the previous CAOs was working on a vacant building policy. And I'd like to surface that again and go after that and have the people that are just letting buildings sit empty in a world with a housing crisis either fix them up and make them available for housing, or put them on the market and let someone else do that work.
And there is that option somewhere? There's, just as an example, a house across the street from me is just empty. And the town has had to come in and tear trees down and fix broken windows and stuff. So
Right.
do we have something in our power that?
We can absolutely enact a vacant buildings bylaw and a vacant lots bylaw too.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
gonna say, the other one would be a vacant land bylaw, right? Because there are, you know, so many tracts of land that are, you know, 2, 5, 10, 15 acres in size. And they have services going by them, and they've been sitting there growing moose pasture, deer pasture for the last decade or two, right? And that's, you know, so one way to encourage that would be to, right now, it costs pennies to hold vacant land. You know, if you don't want to sell your land, you don't want to sell your land. But maybe if you're holding vacant land and it's got services right there, it would be really wonderful to have houses on there or businesses on there, so that we can put more taxpayers on, so we can drive down the tax rate, right? Rather than always having to drive it up, right? So with more taxpayers on the services we've already gotten in place, we could start to think about actually reducing the tax rate.
So we don't
which
have a current vacant property bylaw?
we do not.
We're gonna talk,
Either,
okay.
either lots, or
Or
either property,
property.
buildings nor lots.
I can speak to this particular topic. Previous council to this one has already explored this issue at length, and it boiled down to, and I'm very keen to see another iteration of it, don't get me wrong. It came down to the issue we have with enforcement. It just became a matter of, you know, it looks great on paper, it's just not something that had the teeth behind it from enforceability. So
That was the
unless-
next part of
yeah,
my
so-
question,
so
'cause
it-
you had done
unless-
some.
We absolutely have.
Yeah.
So unless something is changed that we can put some teeth to it, I don't think we waste any time and resources further in that one, just based on what we've done in the
Yeah,
past.
I-
Unless we can get over the enforcement piece.
Yeah, Mitchell's right on. We had that discussion at a previous council and looked at drafting a bylaw with regard to that. And I think like Mitchell says, it came down to the fact that it was virtually not enforceable. Or it was enforceable to like a $50 fine or something. You know, it was a slap on the wrist. And I don't know if I think what we need to find out is that MGA that's saying that, or is that just, you know, are we not able to do it?
It shouldn't be, I doubt that it's the MGA, but I'd have to go look. I mean, I think it's really a matter of how much effort do we want to put in this as a town?
I think we were using Truro. I think
think it
Truro
was
had
Truro,
one.
yeah.
Truro had enacted a bylaw, but
Yeah.
it was I think it was $25 or something.
Yeah, well, that makes
It
no
was-
sense.
It was like,
Right.
why would you bother doing it?
But it really, like, in principle, I'd be very supportive. I think just about everybody here would be supportive in principle, because I know we were in the past. It's just, if we can get, if we can make it actually do what it is intending to do, as opposed to just being another bylaw on the books with no teeth to it.
Right. Right.
Well, and there's the matter, perhaps the bigger challenge. I don't think it will be hard to make it enforceable in the sense that we can provide the right incentives for people to comply. But how do we get people out on the ground to make that happen? That's, I think, our bigger challenge. And so do we, I've already spoken with a retiring bylaw enforcement officer in Antigonish to see if he would be open to, on a kind of as needed basis, provide that service. And he goes, you're the second town to ask me that. But he doesn't retire until early summer, and he's probably going to want to take off some time before jumping back into anything, but he's open to the idea. So that kind of a person would be who we need to find, and just use them as needed. And
Yeah,
perhaps,
would his rate even, you know, make what we're gonna get back from it worthwhile? Do you know what I mean? Like,
sure,
at
no,
the end of
and
the day?
at some
Like, I mean,
point,
we don't
you,
wanna be spending more bad money after bad, right?
right, but if we're going to turn the corner on this whole issue,
Yeah.
we're going to have to make an investment, I think.
Absolutely. And just to go to that piece, that's the front end for the enforcement piece, but back to the previous conversation we had last PAC, it was PAC, we have no registered schedule for summary offense tickets for bylaws in this town. So we have nothing to enforce at this present juncture under the Department of Justice. So we have all these policies, we have all these bylaws that have all these threats of fines ranging from a quarter for a jukebox to,
Yeah.
you know, $500 for dog at large or what have you. But we have no enforcement mechanism because we have no registered schedule right now with the province, so. Which isn't hard to do, it can be done. I don't think that's the wheelhouse of the students, like, that's not,
Right,
that's
no.
not their purview.
Yeah.
It would be,
No, but that would
You
be
know.
something that we would
That
have to
would
do
be
in order
us.
to enforce what we need
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
enforce, right? We gotta
Absolutely.
start at the right spot.
yeah,
It's a very cumbersome
Right,
process,
so-
the way it's set up.
it very much is.
Well, and the town needs to be up for the pain that enforcement
Exactly.
Right.
brings with it, right? Because
Yeah.
it's, you know, it pisses off people sometimes and those sorts of things. And so, you know, but if it's important, then, you know, then that's what you have to do, right? So, you know, and I think that, you know, to Sarah's point, that's part of what I think we were seeing in that survey, right? Is people saying, gee, you know, we need to put a little lipstick on the Westville pig here to, you know, it needs to look better, right? That people would be happy with better lights, better sidewalks, and those sorts of things.
It's community pride, and it'll happen when it's contagious almost. When it starts in a few places, other people will see it. We had an example, you know, I can just share a very quick story. CAO and I had a gentleman, when I was in my office yesterday, pop in and have some questions about a piece of land adjacent to his property, interested in, you know, knowing whether he could purchase it or not. And his reason for doing it was to, you know, put some additional buildings on there, not just to have the land, because he wanted more space, which was our first thought. But more importantly, one of the comments that he made was that he's already done renovations to an existing home where he lives in town here, and he's done extensive renovations to it. And and what he said was, my neighbor next door, who had some derelict sort of things in his yard and was sort of, you know, just letting things go, said to him, I gotta pick up my game here. I gotta straighten things up and make my property look better, because this guy had done the improvements on his property. And I really believe that that's what's gonna happen. And what's gonna happen as well with some of these vacant places that we're talking about, is when development starts happening, some of the development that we know is going to be happening within the next couple of years, I think that it'll be that momentum that people will say, hey, like this guy, for example, this gentleman that I'm talking about again, if he goes ahead and does what he's talking about doing and getting that piece of land next to his and puts those dwellings on there that he's talking about, I would think that other people in this town who have similar properties right now are sitting on large lots with one house on it, would see it as an opportunity. You know, God, you know, why not? So I'm optimistic that, you know, when we get it going, it'll snowball and it'll take effect. And, you know, nobody wants to be first. Nobody wants to do it and say, how come nobody else is doing it? That must be crazy. But so it's getting those first few that's the most difficult, right? And we know that. We've been working at that for the last 10 years almost. So, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And it's going to happen. And Scott and Sean know my slogan for 25, and it's, you know, Westville's coming alive in 25. And it's going to happen.
That's catchy.
I think we have to remember too that
This was a paid political announcement.
Sounded like one.
Elections are for another 4 years.
You get 4 years on.
that's it. You know, it only takes one property in an entire neighborhood to drag the neighborhood down. And so, yes, there will be people who are angry if they get a letter from us indicating that, you know, we're expecting more in terms of property maintenance. Everybody around them is not going to be angry with us. They're going to be pleased that we're doing something about this challenging situation that the town faces.
Well, look at the unsightly, you know, when unsightly, you know, are made, it's because of that. You know, they're living next door or close to
Yeah.
someone that they feel is unsightly, and rightly so, really.
So one doesn't want to just use the stick. There's also carrots. And what I was thinking is that there are a lot of people who may have properties or houses that could be made useful, but they aren't because they don't know where to start. They don't know how to go find funding. They don't know who to call. And so I also wanted to, if there's time, task the students with developing information in that regard as well. So that, you know, let's help them do the thing that we want them to do, we need them to do, the community needs them to do.
Yep.
Something like a getting started package.
Basically, yeah, absolutely.
How to get started, yeah.
I think that's a key, really, no question. And that used to exist, like, you know, that was a common thing back many years ago, that there was these programs to assist people in fixing up their properties and so on, and I don't know what happened to it.
And perhaps we could leverage the office down the hall as well for some of the grants and stuff, and, you know, not necessarily our message to tell, but it certainly doesn't hurt for us to connect that dot, because there are a lot of grants available right now to folks in certain income brackets, whether it be for heat pumps or associated heating equipment, right through to renovations, including windows and things of that nature. So I think that would be beneficial as well.
And one of the things, Mr. Chair, that through to Sean, that I recall in the report that the students did was forming an I want to say organization, but that's probably too strong of a word, but a group that would facilitate people to, you know, improve their homes and so on. You know, that was one of the things that I saw in there, and I think was a good one, recommendation. But and we have, and so we have a group in the county now, the Affordable and Supportive Housing Association, that's been formed, and I would think they would be an appropriate one to drive that sort of thing, really.
So those were kind of the main things that I wanted to
So-
look at with the students, and
Yeah,
Scott
so-
had a few others. I don't know if he wants to
Yeah.
jump in on them now,
Yeah,
or,
well, you know, I wanted, the focus that I was interested in was, you know, we've got Mr. Day running like a chicken without a head most of the time. He's working on Westville stuff. There's way more stuff going on than he has hours in the days he gives us. And so, you know, there are some things around the land use bylaws that it would be very nice to have planners kind of look at and say, okay, let's make these kinds of changes. And bring those forward and get some of that stuff done. So that was the other area. Again, you know, 80 hours is about that much time, right?
Yeah, right.
And, you know, mucking about with land use bylaws is not for the faint of heart or, and is not easy. So, you know, it's a challenge, and the other thing we want to do is make sure that we're giving the interns a decent experience, right? Because this is part of their education, and it's not just about us. We need to be able to make sure that they get a good experience. So those are really the 2 or 3 or 4 places where I think they could really be useful. And you know, what I think we will do, if you guys are all right with it, is as PAC and as council, we'll take these things, the things that we've discussed, to them and kind of try and see how that works. You know, what available time against expected expenditure of time, right? And try and get a place where we get the best bang out of their you know, 80 hours that we can.
When do they start?
I guess this week,
Okay.
yeah.
My comment was gonna be if it's down the road a little further, it might have been prudent to have an asset management meeting, because this council hasn't had one yet.
Right.
And we haven't had one in a while.
Right.
But obviously that's not gonna work out timing.
Yeah,
timing-wise.
yeah, no, and I think you're right, that we need it, and as a new council, we definitely need to do it. And I'm hoping that, and I've been reaching out to both Dalhousie and to St. FX around their public admin programs. So they both have public admin programs, and those programs also have internship requirements for some levels of the courses. And so I'm hoping to maybe try and scoop another, body or two for a short period of time. The downside is that it's very episodic, right? You know, they come and they got it for a little bit of time and then they're gone. But there are things that we can do that would be helpful to the town and helpful to me and helpful to Mr. Day.
Yeah. I was just going to follow up on that, I think that, we should utilize them to do some of those things that we're asking Sean to do right now that are taking him away from, some of the more, I hate to say more important, but critical to the development that we're talking about moving forward as quickly as possible. I think that's where we want, in my opinion at least, we want Sean's efforts to be the time that he can give to us. And if we have the luxury of having these students, if they, on the looking at the intermunicipal agreement and the land use bylaws and all that sort of stuff that we gave to Sean to do as well, allow them to get into that, get their teeth into that stuff, and it's strictly got to be good for future planners, I would think, and free up Sean from that to concentrate on working with the developers that we currently have, working on the DAAs, working on the permitting and getting through the process so we can get on with
Zoning
we can get on with shovels in the
all
ground.
that sort of
I mean,
stuff.
I just want to see. I want to see shovels. I want to see backhoes and excavators everywhere in this bloody
Go
town.
over to Acadia.
Yeah, I was gonna say, go to Acadia, I'm getting the
I know
calls.
they're there. It's a start, and down on Old Trora Road as well. I mean, there's signs. It's happening.
And the new building on Dufferin is pretty much ready for occupancy, so.
And I know on the agenda, there's a couple updates to come that'll speak to some of those things.
Yeah. All right, I think,
But before we go, just one thing more, like, we don't want to lose this, the valuable stuff that the students did for us.
Yeah.
In that report that we've got, that we all, labored over on the weekend, bedtime reading, Sean. We don't want to lose, we don't want that to sit idly and collect, well, I guess they don't collect dust anymore because it's all electronic now.
Right.
Whatever they do. But we want to, so I think we need to, my suggestion would be that, like I said in the beginning, I think, it's too much to think about all at once. It overwhelms you. But break it into the sections that they dealt with, maybe, and say, okay, what are we going to do on this particular area that they identified, right? And think about it as a strategic plan. That's the way I see it.
I should also note that I didn't send you everything yet. I
thanks.
thought I'd parse it out a little bit.
Great.
There's in the order of 200 pages,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Associated with that thing. So,
Says, oh, by the way.
There's more.
one more.
And now for the rest of the story.
Right.
It's all good. It's all good.
So, are you going to kind of, between you and Sean,
Yeah, we'll
Figure out what's
figure it
needed.
out, and we'll, I'll get an email out to everybody on PAC saying, here's where we think we're gonna do it, and if anybody really hates the idea, the approach, you can yell at us, and we'll change the direction. But, I think that we've heard you, and we know what they've got, and we kind of know how much work there is, and so we're gonna try and put the jigsaw puzzle together, and then we'll tell you what we're proposing, and you can either agree with us or disagree with us, and we can adjust if you disagree.
Right.
And to go to Councilor McGregor's comment about the asset management, committee, you would think that, it would be good to have them involved in getting an appreciation for what's been done there, what's going on, and the rest of council as well, because we, like you said, we haven't, as a new council, we haven't had that opportunity. And a lot of the things in that around asset management will be covered in that report. It's all interrelated. We can't.
Well, and I think, you know, on the asset management thing, we're going into the budget period, right?
Right.
So we have to build budgets, so asset management
That's the other thing.
is one of the basic building blocks of, you know, half the budget sort of thing.
Right.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to do that.
Right. Moving on. Into updates. And the first one is the Acadia 24 unit.
Well, there's machinery doing stuff there now.
Shovels in the ground. Gotta love it.
Yeah, shovels in the ground.
Scott and I were just talking to the ultimate owner of the project today, and he wants to have units rented by May 1. Now, that won't be all of them, but that is hopefully going to be some of the 24 units, so they want to get going right now. We've been still dealing with some things that are slowing things down a little bit, and we're just waiting for the engineers to confirm that the detailed engineering work that was just submitted to us a short while ago is solid. If it is, then that's it. We're ready to sign off. The building inspector today informed me that he was going away for a considerable period of time. He has someone coming in his place, but it's a different working relationship. But he asked that I have each of the 6 buildings on a separate permit, because that's how he'll be dealing with them. He doesn't want them all on the same one. It's too confusing to say, you know, unit 1, building 1, unit 4, building 2. It just gets confusing, given all the stages of inspection. So I'm going to have to relay that to the proponents, the developers, and get things sorted out with regard to that. But they know we're ready to go, essentially, and there's not much left on their side. They do also, they have an interest in the piece of land that the town owns there, so they're going to be sending in a letter explaining that they have that interest. I don't know if council has declared it surplus at this point or not. I can't recall. And so perhaps, do we need a motion on that, Mr. Weirs?
Yeah, well, I'll need to build a report.
Okay.
And bring that forward and get council to agree. So, and so a critical part of that report will be, there is somebody who has expressed an interest in acquiring that property, because, you know, otherwise, we don't want to release property for the sake of releasing property. It needs to have a use. And, you know, I'm expecting that the developer that you're mentioning will send in a letter saying, I'd like property X, and I'd like to do Z on property X, you know, 3 units, 2 units, whatever it is. And then that would be the thing that I could come to council and say, PAC and then council, and say, there's a town-owned property, there's an interest. It would make sense to see if either that developer or others would like to move on development. And we could then, dispose of the property, and we would do it with a condition of, you know, there needs to be whatever number of units on that property, so that what we do is infill and try and set up a situation where we're setting the town up to be able to reduce tax rates downstream.
We have other properties. We have some other properties in town that we probably need to be looking at as far as declaring them surplus. And and the gentleman that I mentioned, the scenario that I mentioned previously, you know, that piece of land has not been declared surplus, although we own it. So we'd have to go through that step first. We explained that to him.
Right.
So, yeah.
If I may, I just want to go back to one quick question for Sean. So you had said it's back to the building permit. So there was one have we issued a building permit for the Acadia project already?
Not yet.
We haven't issued
No,
one.
they've made
Okay.
an application.
Right, okay.
But I
Yep.
can't sign off on the development permit until I have confirmation that the engineering is solid.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right, and
Yep,
then once I do
understood.
that, then the
Right.
inspector can issue building permits
Yep.
based upon their drawings, provided everything is as it needs to be.
Perfect. So the question on the building permit, is there an additional fee for the proponent for each of the new building permits, now that we're requiring 6 versus 1?
Question.
There would be, it would amount to, I think, $50 per building. So it'd be another $300, but, you know, we're talking about
Yeah.
a project that's worth a
Oh,
few
no,
million,
yeah,
so.
understood, yeah, yeah. And really, okay, so that's a preference of the interim building inspector
The
as
current,
opposed
the
to-
main building inspector,
Okay,
yeah. And I understand why. It
Yeah.
will get very jumbled if
Right.
you're trying to do 24 units
Right.
in multiple buildings.
Right.
It's gonna be,
so.
and you've got, I think, 8
will Shaw-
inspections per unit.
Will Shaw be
so.
taking 10 out across the street? Will that be?
I think that we should, well, the same desire would be there on the part of the
And that's
building
what, yeah,
inspector.
and I guess that's
so.
what I'm asking, would that be the preferred
Yeah.
method forward? If
Going
we're going to have
forward.
multi-unit developments going forward, do we just adjust?
It's more work for me too,
policy?
so I wasn't that, you know,
Well, no,
excited
and that's,
about the
and that's what I was
idea,
gonna say, like, is this unnecessary burden? Like, the province has been, for the last number of years, at the provincial level, trying to have red tape reduction. And I would think that, you know, as a town, that's also something that we would be looking at, is, you know, if one permit satisfies the same thing that 10 would, and it's a complexity issue of case management or file management of the building inspector, I'll leave it at that, but the other thing becomes, I know fees are generated as well, which is a, you know, it does
Yeah.
support the planning and development, I do understand, although they're small fees, but they add up, you
Yeah.
know? 1,000, let's say we have 1,000, well, great, but
I-
let's say 1,000 units, add another
Maybe we have
$50 a
1,000
unit.
I-
No, I'm just saying, so.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with Councillor McGregor. I mean, I understand the building inspector works for us, I'm guessing. I mean,
Right.
I think we pay him. I think I've seen some checks.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, so, you know, if we decided like you're saying, Mitchell, you know, to cut the red tape and say, if you're doing a development of 20 units, 24 units, you need one building permit. And there'll be, you know, inspections will be done individually. Surely to God, it's just a matter of paperwork, of filing, creating
Right,
files
and that's what I don't-
under
I
the
don't
one
know.
permit, right?
Yeah. Why don't I have a conversation with the interim building inspector to see if they feel that there will be any issue with that? Because I agree, it can be done. It's paper juggling.
Whatever advantage we can give to developers coming to Westville
Yeah.
as opposed to somewhere else, we need to do that. That doesn't, you know, doesn't throw away things that we need to be, you know, due diligence. It doesn't create throwing out the due diligence.
It also-
We need that.
It also does not stop certain building blocks being available for occupancy before others,
And that-
because that can be
Right.
done as, you can do partial permits
Yeah.
or partial occupancies of
Right.
portions of a building or portions of a development. And that's how I anticipate this will go. Like, the buildings will come, they're not all gonna arrive on site at once. They'll come in some sort of, you know, iterative fashion as they work through them, and they will be occupiable also in that respect. We'll have to think about how to have safety on the site, because if there's construction going on while people are occupying the spaces, we'll have to map that out, how to best achieve that. But I don't anticipate a problem with that.
Who's doing the Acadia one? Who's the
It's
developer?
Twin Rivers.
Oh, okay.
They won't, ultimately, they won't own it, but they're kind of a partner in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
For Shaw, there'd be 10 new PIDs though, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
So then I would have.
That's easier on the Shaw one.
Yeah, there might have to be 10 new permits
Yeah.
there, but.
And people
but-
buying those units would want
where
individual
Acadia
permits.
is just one big parcel of
One
land.
big
Correct.
parcel of land,
And
yeah.
going in,
Yeah, there's a difference between for sale and for rent,
Right.
right? You know,
can't do-
the same thing, you know, if you think about the school, right? There'll have to be a building permit up there when they start renovating that. And there are 64 units. We're probably not gonna issue 64 building permits, right? Like that.
One permit.
But there does need to be some way to, you know, to deal with that, right? The realities.
I feel that's an administration issue with the inspector almost.
I think
Yeah.
the biggest challenge is gonna be the software we use. It's not gonna like this at all. I'm not even sure how it can be entered in the software, the portal that we use for this. So that may end up being the deciding factor. If there's
Right.
no way to bend that software to do
Right.
this, we may have to do it on a building-by-building
Or
basis.
we may have to invest in new software. That's a painful process.
That is
though,
a
too.
painful process, yeah.
Yeah, costly as well.
Yeah,
I
even
think-
if it isn't costly, it's often painful from an administration perspective.
Would we, I guess in the same sense, if we had somebody build a new, a new family home and then a single detached garage with, let's throw some residential upstairs, would we require 2 building permits for those, for the outbuilding as well right now?
Were they happening at the same time? or-
Right, same time, yeah, boom,
Same time, it's all on one PID,
right,
so it's easy to do it on one PID.
right.
Having just said that, you would think that would also go to this other property, which is also on one PID. But again, there just isn't a way to put this information in neatly.
Oh, I will say this is a good problem to have.
Sure.
I'm
I
not
agree.
being negative, and this is more just to kind of educate me, because this
Absolutely.
is one of the first kind of multi-unit things that have come through in the 4 years that I've been here, so this is more just kind of helping me better
Probably
understand
the
that
first-
process.
It's probably the first multi-unit thing in probably a decade.
I bet you,
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
More.
And just on that front, so let's just, if you just stop and think for just a couple of seconds, and if the Shaw stuff on Drummond goes ahead at 10 units, and Acadia Avenue goes ahead at 24 units, so we're talking 34 units. If Temperance Street, the Riverview goes ahead, that's another 6 units, that's 40 units. Let's assume that Truro Road goes ahead, another 4 units, 44 units. That is more building permits in this town than probably in the last 30 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And that's a mixture of purchase, or sales and rentals.
Correct,
Right.
yeah, it's a mix
Yeah.
of sales and rentals. And, in addition to that, we've got the 2 that went in on Dufferin. They're there already, right? There's also, how many is it on Drummond here at the corner by?
4.
4 at the corner of Drummond and South Main, right? Just in from there, so it's currently vacant, but they're gonna be starting to build, I assume this spring.
Foundation's already in on Truro Road for the first of the
I
7
saw
detached
that.
buildings.
Yeah.
Foundation is in.
So there's a lot of stuff happening, which
Shovels
kind
in
of
the
goes
ground.
to the mayor's point about, I need Mr. Day to focus on the projects.
Absolutely.
And keep those going.
Yep.
And,
100%.
we'll use the
Take some.
students to do the kind of the policy planning kind of stuff, so that we can try and get a number of things done, kind of in
Yes.
parallel.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else?
Not on Acadia.
The Shaw Drummond compact home unit.
Yeah, so the update, I can do the update, because I literally just received emails today about it. So we've approved the development agreement. The development agreement is being registered tomorrow, by end of day tomorrow, with Land Registry, which means then, I believe, that Shaw is then able to apply for the building permits, right? Like, once the development agreement is approved and in place. So I'll be passing that information on to Shaw early tomorrow morning, in the hope that they will move with alacrity to apply for building permits. I don't think that they're gonna put 10, I don't personally expect them to put 10 units in instantaneously. I do think that they will put in 4 or 5, and then they'll watch the market and see what happens, and see how quickly they are or are not gobbled up. And if they are gobbled up quickly, they will be slapping more places down fairly quickly, would be my guess, right?
Just to refresh my memory on that, I know we talked about the realigning of the intersection
Yeah.
down this end. Is there a way that they can place the units in the middle that would still give safe distance from the intersection as
Yeah,
is right now?
that's the plan.
Is that the plan?
That's right,
And
yeah.
then nobody's sinking money into
Correct.
infrastructure?
That's exactly what we're
Perfect,
proposing.
okay, yeah. I couldn't remember if that's where,
And so
If
I
that's where we had
still
landed.
have to have
Yeah.
that discussion, shall we say, about, you know, how we split the cost of the road realignment. I think the principle of cost splitting is there. There's some difference between me and Shaw about who pays how much, sort of thing, right? But I think it's solvable. And the reason we've done, just as you were thinking, Councillor McGregor, is because I'm waiting for the geotechnical reports for the Pioneer lands, right? And so if those come back and are positive, then there is, you know, a bunch of property that suddenly is open for development. And if they are a developer and that realignment is giving additional access to 30 or 40 more units or something like that, then that fundamentally changes the calculation of who pays and who benefits, right? So, you know, it was a bit of a hard fought point, but we were able to agree that we'll do it in the middle and we'll just hold off on the expensive infrastructure spending until it's a little clearer for everybody. And you know, if the reports, if the geotechnical monitoring reports come back negative, then we're going to have to pick up a bigger share than I was hoping for. If it comes back positive, we'll have to pick up a smaller share than I was hoping for, I think, right? But it's subject to negotiation and all that. But I think there's agreement on the principle of there's going to be cost sharing. We both know, both parties understand that there needs to be a realignment to keep people safe and be effective, right? So I think that's it for the Drummond Street property.
I think we've also canvassed the Dalhousie internship
Yes.
part of things tonight, so we don't need to spend more time on that.
Okay. So
Um, Scott, maybe you're on Main Street initiatives, if we have anything new on that since the last time we met?
Yeah, I don't remember what, when, I'm about to go out and, RFP or whatever, quotations for the buildings for the pop-up business area. We need to, so I need to get started on that. In the meantime, I have put together an additional grant application to enhance that area, and we'll see how that flies. So it's with the province, right? So it would be same property, but spending a little more money to, you know, put in a pergola, put in some landscaping, and actually some programming there to kind of attract people to the area. So that is in with the provincial government, and we'll see what happens when that happens. And there's some additional thinking that is kind of, it's too early in the process to really talk about, in the sense that I don't really know what I'm talking about, but there's other opportunities that I can see out there. And so I'm working with the granting organizations to say, gee, if we came up with this idea, is that something that falls within your scope? Would you be willing to do it? So it would be a kind of a community economic slash economic development kind of space. So it's something additional to kind of breathe a little bit more life and commercial activity into Main Street, right? So really focusing on trying to, you know, fill in Main Street so we don't have, you know, vacant property after vacant property after vacant property, and bring people, you know, bring people into the space.
And once again, to go to the report that was done by the students, as you will recall, one of the existing sort of case studies that they used was with regard to a town that did the pop-up scenario that we're talking about. But they talked about, more than just putting buildings there and opening them up to people to try their business ideas out. It had to be a broader sort of, thing involved around it, for entertainment and bringing people in different ways and the aesthetics of it. And that's what Scott is trying to get for us at little or no cost, hopefully. So I think that if we can do that, it's just going to, my God, it's going to be such a difference and make such an impact in downtown. There's no question about it.
If I may, do we know when the gallery is due to open? Because that'll be big.
It's going to be big.
Yeah.
So I was speaking with Catherine Chasson today because I've been watching the progress of this unfold slowly. It's an old building.
Yeah.
And they want to do different things with it than have been done for a very long time. And I think they're struggling to get the expertise they need to help them with this.
Historic.
And so I asked Catherine to send me, some more information today, and I'm going to see what I can do to kind of help them along. But it's a challenge because it's, new construction, relatively speaking, is easy. When you're trying to do something in
And
a
they're
building.
doing a lot of the work themselves.
They
too.
are
They're
trying to, that's right.
keep costs and stuff down.
That's
so
right.
They're really working hard at it.
So it's not an easy thing. And our code compared to the code in the US, they give a lot more credence to what they call archaic materials. We kind of don't. I don't know if Canada has just become a disposable society where we throw things away and start fresh, but it's a bit harder here to reuse old buildings, which is unfortunate because it's exactly what we need to be doing, or at least I feel it is, as you know. So fingers crossed that we'll keep them moving and they won't lose hope. I don't think they will. I think that they're tough and they have a vision for the property. So, yeah.
It's good. It's going to have such an impact.
Yeah, and I think if
It's gonna
we
be
could
incredible,
get it
really.
in that spot there and then the pop-up and everything.
Yeah,
it would
Absolutely,
be really,
100%.
yeah.
Have you guys ever heard of Art Battle? So Art Battle is one of the most exciting live art events you could possibly ever attend. They have them in Halifax on a fairly regular basis, and you could imagine a room, for a small one, of this size, and in the center where these fine gentlemen are, imagine 6 canvases arrayed in a circle. And imagine, very specific lighting, and the rest is kind of dark, and there may be adult beverages involved and some music, and they're tasked with painting anything they want
Yep.
in set amounts of time. And then everyone who's in the audience who is paid to attend bids, or not bids, but they vote on them. And then that group will go away, there will be a winner, that winner will compete against the winner of the next round and the next round, and finally there's one. It is just, it's electric.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun to watch them work. And I asked if Catherine would be open to that. She goes, absolutely, that sounds like super fun.
Yeah.
And that would draw people into this town from all over northern Nova
In
Scotia.
a previous life, we still have the art hanging on our wall, but in previous life, we did it, and I can't remember, we probably drove an hour and a half to go to, this small town in, central Ontario that was having an art battle. And, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And there's probably, 150 people at this thing,
Yeah.
right? And it wasn't a town, it was a town no bigger than New Glasgow, for sure.
We
Well,
could,
Shoebox Cantina hosted similar to the artist, or it was writing. And so they had a certain amount of time and they had to write a certain, bit of the story. And it was quite successful. They had quite a few people come in from around the province to
Nice.
participate. They had teams of 4 or whatever. So I think, it could fly on the art side of it.
I could even see if we, depending on what we get for funding for a pergola, I could see them happening there in that space.
That'd be brilliant.
It'd be really fun. Talk about activating the downtown.
Yeah, I see big things.
I had something come into my head and you derailed me. It may come back.
It'd be Tim Hortons in a show now for those that choose to.
Right?
Do you have anything more on that, or are we going to go to
It'll come back to
review homes?
You know what, I have something that's related to the next one. And so it actually will come back to the Main Street one briefly as I speak to the Riverview one.
All right.
We had some good news, I believe, with regard to sewer access on Temperance Street, which was kind of unexpected to me. I'm pleased that things are where they seem to be. But that wasn't what I wanted to talk about. They're keen to get going on that. But I've also been in contact with them just today about another initiative that they want to launch for their green team, which involves purchasing a property in town, making some changes. Are you familiar with the green team? It's a social enterprise that Riverview runs, and they have clients who basically do landscaping and other work in the community.
They maintain the grounds around the facility out in
I
Riverton.
didn't know that.
Oh,
Yes, I
okay.
did. Yes,
It's
I
one
did.
thing that they did majorly.
So, and they want to expand that. They want to make it so that they could come to your place or your place and do that same kind of work.
They can come to mine.
Right. And so we were talking about that today, and while we were having that conversation, I've been asking, when will we get a River Run Cafe in Westville? And they apparently are open to that and are giving that some consideration. And so I'm trying to team them up with someone who may have space available. We'll see how that goes.
That's an awesome.
That
it
would
is
be
I go
I
there
would-
probably once a week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
would
have a
be
meeting there
all
tomorrow at noon.
over
Have
a
ya?
River Run
Yeah.
Cafe here.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
would work it.
Yeah.
And they've got some other social enterprise ideas as well. One of them under discussion is, I said, if we do start to surface these old houses that can be renovated, a lot of them will need a gut. And could you develop a green team that does that? And they're like, yeah, we could. A D team.
A D
That's
team,
right.
yeah.
A D
Demo
team.
demo
Demo
team.
team.
So, I mean, that's a really interesting collaboration, and they're very interested in it. So we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover between here and there, but
Exciting.
you got to start someplace. So.
Yeah.
So just to kind of close the loop on Riverview then, Temperance Street, they're looking at 3 duplexes. And we retained TNB Plumbing
Right.
to run a remote camera through the sewer pipe that's from the current home, the Thomas Lang home, to identify exactly where it went, because for reasons that I don't understand, it doesn't appear on any of our maps. So we've got that done now, and that is kind of the last big hurdle, I hope, from a kind of a infrastructure perspective. And so now we know for sure that it's possible to hook them up to sewer, water's no problem, and hopefully they decide to apply for building permits in the near future, because there's no need for a development agreement there because it's as of right. And
We'll have to do a subdivision, but
have to do a subdivision, yeah, to put them on separate parcels. But, and I'm hoping that Riverview will understand, and I've meant to say this a couple of times during this update session about, we do have the Westville Municipal Infrastructure incentive program.
Incentive.
And, it kicks in at 10 units. So if you're a developer and you're doing 10 units, the town can be there to offset a small portion of your infrastructure costs to the tune of $2,500 per door. So, if Riverview's doing 3 duplexes, that's 6.
Need 4 more.
You just need
Yeah.
4 more, and we could
25.
actually give you some money. And, they've got lots of land
We
there.
have a board
so-
member in the audience, so I hope he's listening to this.
So hopefully they kind of, are able to see their way clear to plan, and all they have to do is apply for the 10 building permits. They don't have to build them tomorrow. They've got a shelf life of, 24 months anyway, maybe longer. So that would be, good. Anyway, I think that's it for that one, for
Just
Riverview.
quick comment, I guess, on that, because I don't know how much of this takes place where we have folks like TNB come out and shoot the sewer or water, I believe it was sewer you had
Right.
said. we still have the old status of the infrastructure reports from PDI.
Yeah.
Are we trying to maintain any kind of updated version when we do this to kind of make any note, like is public works
We
doing it?
are
Okay,
trying.
Yeah,
It's a
good.
challenge.
Yeah.
Part of the reasons it's a challenge is we don't have GIS.
Right, no, absolutely,
And,
yeah.
And so, that's why what we did is on the Riverview thing on Temperance, what we did is as we ran the camera through,
Yeah,
when it got to, oh, it's a 45-degree turn to the right,
yeah.
they put a stake in the,
Right.
they literally
No,
went
yeah,
out
yeah,
and put a stake
yeah,
in the ground.
yeah.
You know, when it goes from
Yeah.
6 inches to 8 inches, or 8 inches to 12 inches.
Yeah.
We mark those
Perfect,
spots so
yeah.
that we can do exactly what you're talking about.
I assumed that would logically be something we were doing, I guess I just
Yeah.
never really
Yeah.
took the time to
And
ask.
if we had GIS, you know, that would be so much better. But we
Absolutely.
don't, and we just have to, you know, deal with that reality until we can sort that all out. And I know Mr. Day is working on.
In my
GIS.
spare time.
Yeah. In his spare time, and yeah, exactly. And again, you know, GIS would be wonderful, it would be so much more efficient, but I can't have him take his eye off the projects
Yeah.
to do the GIS,
And
right?
120 hours of student time isn't gonna do
No.
it.
And
Well-
no. Not gonna do it.
I have my people working on it.
All right, the NSCC update?
Yeah, so on that, the very good news is, we got an application for change of zoning. We got an application for a development agreement, and we got a check for those application fees. And so, Mr. Day is hard at work, building the stuff that we need to do now to get that development agreement in front of you, probably for the February meeting, right? And,
If I can get enough information.
yeah, so
Yes, February.
that's what we're driving to, which would then allow us to, you know, hopefully allow them to apply for building permits and that sort of thing. They have advised us that they are in detailed discussions of a financial nature with both the provincial government and CMHC. So that sounds about as good as it can be, you know, and they have some capacity for self-financing as well, right? So I'm highly hopeful that, you know, we're in a new spot. We've kind of crossed a threshold where we now actually have them applying for exactly the things we need them to apply for so we can take the next step.
Yeah, it should be noted that they asked, I mean, they, just prior to Christmas, they did reach out to the town and ask, what are the next steps that we need to be doing to move this along? And Mr. Day responded and told them exactly what they needed to do, and they did it. And as the CAO says, with the check accompanying it, required, for the permitting fee, for the fee required. And so I just want to say, because I get asked this almost daily, I'm sure some of you do as well, like, what's happening with the school? Is this going to really happen? I just want to say right now, with this development that happened just a couple days ago, I'm totally, 100% sure, not that I wasn't before, but now it's at that stage where we can say to people, this is happening, folks. It's going to be a reality. And they want to move quickly. And so we want to move as quickly as we possibly can to enable them to move quickly.
So quick question just on the zoning, if I may. Well, it's two questions. The first one being, is a proponent that does not own the property have the ability to apply for a rezoning? Because we've had some nuances in town. And second, I know it's different because we own the property, so we can have some skin in the game.
Right.
At what point do we discuss the rezoning to the CDD up in that area? Because I had understood that was where we were moving. And maybe that's the zoning we're moving to.
Correct.
Okay.
You're right.
I think you're right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and so there's, you know, how do I want to say this? There are a lot of moving parts associated with, you know, NSCC is asking for a relatively small piece of a much bigger pie. And they need, you know, it's currently, the vast majority of that area is currently zoned institutional. That does not fit with what NSCC wants. So we're gonna have, you know, what we're going to do, I think, is move to the comprehensive development area, place. And that will allow us then to kind of slice and dice the whole area at, almost at will, sort of thing, right? So we'll have to come back and say, you know, 3.8 acres for NSCC, you know, Z acres for a long-term care facility, X acres for, you know, housing or whatever, right? So, so we get to the comprehensive development district, and then we've got some maneuvering room from there.
May I ask a question? Just wondering if we need to declare that property, all of it, surplus to our need.
Already did.
It's
Yeah, I
done?
think-
Done. We did it past council.
Yeah.
Okay.
That happened quite a while
Yeah.
ago.
Oh,
That
and
was
so
like
that-
even before me, I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
Linda
okay.
was- Linda
All
was
right.
still here, yeah.
So that's already been done. That's
Might have
great,
been before-
because
might have
just,
been Tupsia was before.
No, it was, Linda was here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay. So just today, we were talking about making the front lands, that we'd have to get them rezoned to R2 and making them available for sale, because they can be done as of right, as opposed
So
to.
that would be the stuff right along the South Main frontage, right?
Yeah. Now, the only reason to not do it that way, but to do it within a development agreement, is if we want to have better control of design.
Right.
So that they do better suit what's across the street. And that, there's an argument for that, for
And-
sure.
And that was one of the number one things that was brought up while you were there, and that's still one of the number one comments I get in passing with residents that live in that area is what assurities we can give them that what we said about making things look like similar
Right,
to the
similar,
things on
right,
the other
right,
side, as
right.
opposed to
Compatible.
what some of
Right.
the other options, you know,
Right.
could be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So should we get all of PAC to weigh in on that, and that gives us direction then?
Yeah, yeah, I think as we, like, so we're at the front end of that whole process, because up until now, we haven't had anybody saying, I want rezoning, right?
Right.
So now we're in a place, now that we know that they're really serious, because they've actually made application, now we can start to think about all of that stuff. And so we're just at the front end of that process. So we will be coming back to PAC in some way, shape, or form on that.
Has it ever been done, and I'm asking because I've never seen it, I've never been through it, where a town owning property that has been deemed surplus take the initiative to rezone it as something else? Let's say it was a situation where we don't have anybody interested on it because it's zoned X, but we know they'd beat the door
That's what
down.
we want.
They did
they
if
had-
we zoned
you know,
it
if
this,
that-
yeah.
that it would be. Has a municipal unit ever taken the liberty to just rezone on their own, or apply to rezone? I guess, I mean, council would be in control of, you know, that process, but, and if that's the case, would we not think, does the CDD zoning better suited if it was just done right at the start for the totality of the property and then start cleaving off, or, I guess, that's a question, because I don't know.
It
from
definitely
planning.
speeds up everything after.
Right.
Because, you know, if we do it all at once, take the whole property, do it CDD, and I honestly don't see why we wouldn't at this point.
Yeah.
Particularly given what you just pointed out. And then it's just a question of the development agreements at that point.
Yeah.
So it's one less thing to write reports on, to have public hearings on, like, all of that becomes streamlined.
One of the things that's sort of, you know, a fly in the ointment with that property is the uncertainty about the, who's going to be doing the long-term care. You know, we expect that it's going to be on that property, but we don't make that decision. Whoever is the successful applicant to the province when they put their request out, will determine where they want to be, along with the province, and they'll make the decision. We just naturally assume that it's going to be there. We've said that to the province already, and any long-term care operator that's approached us, they indicated that's where they'd want to be as well. So it would be ideal if we knew that was happening now. If the province had put out the request for proposals, and we know who the operator is going to be, and they're looking at that site, it would be ideal to have both things happening at the same time. That is, the school project with Nova Scotia Cooperative Council, and the long-term care facility, because there needs to be some cooperation and some collaboration on dividing up the land, particularly when it comes to parking and things and access and all those things. It would be much easier. We have on your behalf, I have conveyed that to the minister recently, within the last week. Last week. I penned a letter with the help of the CAO and I think it was, I don't know whether we circulated it or not, to council members at least, I'm not sure, I can't remember, but we can do that. Expressing that, basically saying, asking for the status of the, when the time is going to come for the requests to go out, if they can share with us give us some indication on that. And then secondly, more importantly perhaps, that it would be very much easier for both of these projects to be going ahead at the same time. And not only from dividing up the property and getting the exact zoning and layout and all of that we need, but for the residents as well, and for the amount of traffic and construction and so on.
And the infrastructure.
And
layout,
infrastructure
right?
that's
So
going to be
at a
going on.
planning and infrastructure level, if we could do the two kind of in tandem, that would be hugely, very much more efficient.
Yes.
So we haven't had a
than doing it in
response as yet,
sequence,
but
right? But
we're hopeful.
anyway, it is what it is, right? So, and we'll deal with whatever we get dealt with, we'll play those cards. It's just, it would be nice to have a stronger, more logical hand than a weaker, illogical hand.
So a follow-up to the zoning then, on your comments, your worship, would changing it to CDD zoning right now, given that it's already an institutional designation or zoning right now, so as of right permitted usage would be to put a long-term care facility there tomorrow, in
Yep.
essence, like as of right permitted.
Yeah.
If it got changed to the CDD, would it put any more obstacles in front of the proponent for the long-term care facility as a CDD? Obviously, it might be. I'm assuming it's easier if it's already institutional, but if it's then I guess my question is, how much more burden would it put on them once it was rezoned to the CDD? I guess.
So I think I could be wrong on this, and Scott, maybe you have a better mental picture of it than I do, but I believe that part of the land they'd be using is currently zoned R2 and part is zoned institutional. So there's already, because it's two parcels over there,
Oh, that's right.
right?
Yeah. So there is a conflict depending upon where the building.
So
would go.
there's already a planning challenge.
So
Yes.
it's the
Yeah.
it's the school property where this from South Main kind of straight up where the access
Right.
road goes.
Yes.
All the way back
Right.
to the ends of the properties that are on Queen Street. That is all currently institutional, and then the 7 or whatever acres it is,
Right.
7.5 acres that is
Right.
sort of off behind Monroe.
That's right.
That is all R2,
That
I
is right.
believe. I'd have to double check, but it's R something, anyway, so.
It's not an
so-
I.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag already, right?
So what do we need to do to put it into the comprehensive development zone?
I write a report, bring it to you guys. We have a public hearing, and we move it forward, presuming there's nothing that arises that suggests we should do something else. And so now we have an application for it, and so
Which is
rather.
kind of the trigger that makes, allows us to kind of.
So
logically-
time frame on that then?
It's hard to predict. I think that, given all of the public outreach that has already been done on this,
Yep.
not only in that we've had the public in to, weigh in on where best to put a long-term care center, but also because we recently went through establishing the CDD. We've already done a lot of that kind of background work.
Yeah.
I, for a variety of reasons, and many of them I'm sure you could guess, don't plan to do a long report on this. I'm going to do a short report and,
Yeah.
get it to PAC,
And we had-
possibly for next meeting.
And we had public input,
The cooperative, yeah.
we had public input on the cooperative
Right.
refit as well.
Right.
So-
Yeah.
So I guess, you know where I'm at. I'm just
Yeah.
like, how do we move this forward without, not doing due diligence and not following, the rules that we need to follow? But at the same time, we don't need to go over the same stuff we've already done and have agreement with. Public has agreed to it. We've had the input. We've had all those things.
So you'll remember that whenever we do anything like a development agreement or a rezoning, there's this long list of things that have to get commented on.
Yes.
So that's the process. I wade through all of that, make comments on all of that, bring it to PAC. If PAC is in agreement or wants some changes, so be it, but they can make a motion at the next meeting, for instance. That could then go to, I guess, the council in that same month for a first reading, and then go to the following council, so that would be March, for a public hearing. And we have to look at making sure we get notices out to everybody in the neighborhood, but they already know it's coming, so.
And they're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
They're asking about it. That's the impression I'm getting. It's not, it's not like you're getting pushback. We're getting like, when is this going to happen? We want it to happen, right? Which is a fantastic thing for a community to have, for a development of that size. Because
It's gonna
most,
make
a
all
lot
of
of
our
communities don't
dogs
get
bark
that.
for a long time, I'll tell you that.
Yes,
In my
that's right.
backyard. It's
That's
gonna make
right.
all the dogs in my backyard bark for a long time.
Not used to having anything back there.
No, it's all been empty right now. I'm
That's
good
right.
back there.
So one of the good things is that some of the challenging things that we're gonna have to deal with, like managing stormwater and things like that, some of that is kind of pushed down the road because it's more at the back of the site. Where this building is an existing building, there's a lot that's already in place. There are some things that we're going to want to ask of them around stormwater management, for example. But I think it's all manageable, so.
So jumps, and what you just said, I'm just doing the timeframe. By the end of March, council meeting the end of March, we could be having the public hearing and then approval, if council approves, and then they have the green light to proceed.
That's, well, and we're gonna want to start, so I'll get this started now. I probably can't also, the development agreement's gonna be hard to write, because we're in uncharted territory with that. And we'll probably have to get some legal advice on that one. So I would say it's gonna be 1 month behind. So if you go at that pace, in theory, we could potentially have them with the development agreement in April.
So we could, so we have, just for my sake, we have a rezoning application from folks already.
Yeah.
Specific to their
3.8 acres.
scope of the project.
Right.
And it may be more beneficial to do the entirety as a CDD and just how that went. And again, they don't own the property, so I'm still not certain how they're able to do that, but there must be some legal maneuvering, as you suggested. But as a town, we can change the whole entirety to CDD, then that's one step done, one piece of the administrative burden gone for the proponents.
They don't have to deal
They
with
don't have to deal
Yep.
with, nor the long-term, well, then, yeah, that's the other piece of it.
And couldn't we kind of agree to that tonight? Like, if that's something we're comfortable with, it makes sense. We've been working with these folks for quite a long time. It's all in place.
So part of, when you look back at the CDD process where we looked at changing our policy to that, one of the things we talked about is that it allows council to have a position on the overall development of the site. So kind of like a master plan for the
Right.
site. And that's certainly an advantage to doing all of it at once, is it kind of gives you the opportunity to say, these are the requirements on this site. They'll be general to some extent, but they'll say, we're gonna rim it with lower density. The higher density will be in the core. You're going to do.
Okay,
things
so we
ar-
need that report first.
Right, and
Yeah.
so that's started, I've already got that started, but it's not come before you yet. And again, it's kind of uncharted territory, but I think I know what I want to see happen. It's just a question of whether everyone will want to see it go that way, and Scott and I will have a chat about this in coming time.
But realistically, it could be to town people by April. Public engagement.
The public hearing could be on the rezoning with the master plan. The overall vision for the site could be March.
March, okay.
And then in if all goes really, really well,
Right.
maybe April for the development agreement. But this is a lot in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah.
Would it also, not to add another layer of complexity, but maybe to hedge some bets, would it be appropriate for continuing on with the rezoning that's in front of us in parallel to the CDD, and then if everything works out, just drop the rezoning application?
No, theirs is to go to CDD.
Oh, it is to
Yeah,
go to CDD as
absolutely.
well? Oh, but only for that one piece?
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, I missed that part of it. Yeah.
And so it's just in the report, I would just say, look, given the intention for the CDD zone, it makes sense for this entire, and given that council has agreed that it's surplus land, and we've talked to the neighborhood, and they have expectations about it. Yeah.
Guess I didn't realize when they were looking to transition from the institutional over to something else, I assumed it was something in the residential kind of bucket,
Right,
not
yeah.
the CDD. Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, we encourage them to look at the CDD because that's kind of, it's the easiest path forward, right? Which is the whole point
Yeah.
of going down that road.
So in what Sarah was saying, is there anything that there's nothing that we could do tonight to start this? There's processes to do before it gets to that point?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we have to report back to the minister, right? And-
Right.
Yeah.
And it is,
So-
I think, a formality on our end. I think we have done an excellent job bringing all of the ideas and being very open and forthright with the public. And they want things to move forward. The company wants things to move forward. Town council wants things to move forward. We're all on the same page of like, keep trucking it through. When it comes down to the rezoning, I understand we as the council have to follow, and the PAC committee meeting have to follow the technicalities and the rules that go along with that. As a citizen of Westville, I don't think anyone cares. I really don't feel like there's if they know what's going to be happening there, they know it's a formality. We're not going to get an outrage of people that are coming in saying, oh, you're
And
changing
you
this
know what,
from
I-
institutional to CDD. Like,
You're absolutely right until you're not,
yeah.
right? You only need one
Yeah.
pissed off.
No, that's right, which is why we have to have it.
Resident to say, hold it,
Yeah.
council ran roughshod over my natural rights.
Yeah.
And so that's why the process, it's.
That's what I'm saying. We have to, it is.
But if we don't do it, we run a risk.
Yep.
Of trampling somebody's natural rights and
No.
then they can,
Yeah.
they can really throw a
Is it-
spanner into the works. So it's frustrating in some ways, but I think it's the right thing to do. is
No,
to
it's the
follow
procedure we have
process
to
and
follow.
get there.
That's right.
But I think,
Like we're so much further ahead than, so many developments where people are saying, hell no, I won't go, right? Like
Yeah,
there is
we're not
nobody
in that.
doing that.
No.
At this point. And so, we will press forward as quickly as we can, but we also want to mitigate any potential risk, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a safe bet. You won't have any,
Right.
but,
but I think as a planning advisory committee, we can just simply request staff to bring forth a report at the next planning advisory meeting with regard to the CDC. Or see, whatever it's called.
yeah.
I don't know the acronym anymore.
That's contract document.
Yeah, I know.
They come way later.
Comprehensive Development Zone, I guess we called it. Didn't we not, Sean? District, sorry, district. Yeah. So I think that's all and I don't think we need Mr. Chair, I don't think we need a motion or anything, but I think it's a consensus that we're asking staff to do that. That'll move it along, at least, anyway.
Yeah.
Because nobody will be saying, why are you devoting all your time to doing that? You should be doing something else. No, planning advisory wants me to do this.
I'll defer any questions I get about
Yeah.
general inquiries to the mayor's desk.
Yeah.
All right. Delegations on issues or discussions arising from business or other business. Anyone?
Here we go.
Mr. McKinnon?
Larry McKinnon, 2326 Cowan Street. I have an idea in relationship to the Dalhousie students. How many people actually go downtown Westville for social reasons? I don't think there are too many. People in Westville have a habit of jumping in their vehicles, even if there are 1/8 of a kilometer away from the pizza joints or Tim Hortons or whatever. And so many places in Europe and elsewhere, there is a social attraction to the downtown. And I'm wondering if the students, while they're looking at sidewalks and so on, could actually, and it doesn't have to be patio dining, if in fact we are having River Run Cafe come to Westville, I don't see why from the middle of June through to the middle of September, when we have nice weather some days, that even small tables could be put outside. You see old timers coming out in some of these towns in Europe, and they're going to their downtown just to sit and have a coffee or to play checkers with their buds or whatever. And if you count the people that are walking the main street of Westville, most of them are out for their health, and the rest of them are going to a destination. No one, very few people, are going downtown for their social being. And I firmly believe that these young people could look at some spots. They don't have to actually be right in front of the establishment. They can be at the side of an establishment. They can be on the lot next to an establishment. But if one or two businesses actually started to move out some little tables or whatever, it doesn't take a hell of a lot of work to do that. But and it doesn't have to be every day. It's just the nice, bright, sunny days. I'd love to stroll down to Westville Main Street and sit down and chat with somebody. Now that I'm not involved in other things, I think that would be a great way to start off your day, and not drive through the drive-through at Tim Hortons. There's more to life than that, right? So with this pop-up business and the other things that are happening, Westville has an exciting future. Yeah, it really does. And I hope I'm around long enough to see some of this come to fruition. And as I said to the mayor, you look at Westville when the next census takes place in this town, 2031, and see the population of what's happening here, and it's going to be a much more pleasant place to live. It's a wonderful place right now, but it's going to be even better.
An
So,
increase.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Can you use those students to look at some spots?
Absolutely.
Good idea.
Yeah.
You know, just very quickly, the gallery that we talked about earlier is going to bring a lot of that to this town. When they finally get finished with their plans, if you've looked at what they're talking about, it's more than just an art gallery. It's going to be an entertainment venue as well, and a focus for social gathering of all kinds. So that's the vision that they have, that I've read, at least anyway. So it's going to be like, I don't think we can overstate how much of an impact that.
Have you been
that's-
into it?
I have not.
It's
Yeah.
it's pretty, you should go in.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's going to have a tremendous impact on this
Yeah.
town, no question.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And Mr. Day has mentioned that they're running into some roadblocks. Is there anything that the town can do other than what you're already doing to assist? Is there anything that they need from us other?
I'm going to wait and see what I get from Catherine.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have enough information right now.
Okay.
But I think we also just need to have a conversation about what else they can do with the building, and particularly upstairs, to make it all make sense.
Yeah.
To Mr. McKinnon's point, placemaking which I talk about from time to time, is all about creating the kinds of places that make people want to do what you're talking about. And Europe was built largely before cars became the dominant method of getting around. And as I've said, probably ad nauseum, we've spent the last 70 or 80 years building places that are kind of hostile to people getting around on foot and wanting to take their leisure in our downtowns. And so there's a lot of downtowns that are fighting back on that, and I believe that we're turning the corner on becoming that kind of town. But it doesn't happen overnight. And you have to have, there's a guy named Michael von Hausen that talks about the importance of critical mass, and you need 10 things going on in a space to bring enough people down to activate that space. And so that could be an outside patio, it could be a game of chess, it could be someone playing boule. Like, you just need enough things going on at the same time to create that excitement where people will go, I'm going downtown. That's awesome, what's happening there. And this is getting way out ahead, but my kids have become a big fan, are fans now of going down to the library in downtown Antigonish. They are there all the time because there's so much going on. There's a lot of other kids going there, and they love walking the Main. That is exciting to them, to have the, the ability to do that, to feel safe doing that, and to find out that there's enough going on that it entertains them. And so, we've got our marching orders, and there's lots to do, but hopefully, in fact, I'm sure we'll find you walking the Main and sitting down and holding court.
I even have a busker down
There you go.
We should acknowledge tonight as well that we have a new business that just opened today in downtown on Main Street, Cliff's Pizza.
Right.
And for those, I think we all noted before the meeting, we were talking, driving into the meeting tonight, prior to 6 o'clock, both sides of the street were lined with vehicles taking advantage of the new business. So,
But that's
I think
interesting though too.
we want to
Lined with
certainly welcome
vehicles.
them.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
lined with vehicles.
Lined with vehicles.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Absolutely.
saying.
On a night like tonight, though, I think we'll give
is-
some
it is
some
January.
credence. Yeah.
No, I know, but the business, unfortunately,
Yes.
because of our accessibility requirements, is a business that isn't going to have outdoor seating. It's not going to create that environment that you're
That's
talking
something that
about.
we could assist, though, with, because we have a wide street there, and if we put our minds to it, if they were interested in it, we could find space for them to put an outside.
But it's the bathroom that's the problem.
Yes, I understand.
Right.
So
We're gonna have Johnny on the spots across the street, by the way.
well, and that's the kind of thing I think that the province needs to take into
Whatever you
account.
call it.
Being more creative about how you accommodate those
Couldn't agree
with
more.
accessibility needs. Like the idea that every single building has to be able to accommodate them doesn't make sense, particularly in our towns that have historic fabric, which is all of them in Nova Scotia, right? But they haven't opened their mind yet, it doesn't seem, to that.
Very selective with the application. I know you and I chatted about it at length there, trying to help a different business in town. It's frustrating to see the application of the legislation and, who gets hit with the big stick and who doesn't, right? It just seems quite arbitrary right now.
Well, and perhaps we'll find a way to create the conditions where the new business will be able to have that outdoor space. It'd be awesome.
I think with a third pizza shop opening up in the town of Westville, we need to connect with Melanie and the businesses. We need to have some sort of pizza community event, like something where we're bringing everybody and it's some kind of like
eating
Rib
contest.
Fest of New Glasgow, but like the pizza of Westville. Like our
this an
pizza is
Italian
amazing.
town? Like, are there a lot of Italians in this town?
I don't know, but we've got awesome pizza. Like there needs to be some sort of
Greek-
pizza event.
Greek, not Italian. Right, Hal?
Well, courtesy of Mr. Weirs, I had a piece of that lovely pizza this evening before the meeting, and it is fantastic.
Excellent.
You had one?
I might have had two.
It looked really good.
Might have-
I took a picture of one.
Yeah.
Dandy. All right,
It was good.
so can someone make
I'll move to go in camera.
Second it.
Moved and seconded.
Sister said it was,
All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Motion carried.
I said it'd be over an hour. I said, well, you might as well drive up right now and get in line.
Exactly right.
That's actually a brilliant